They cut our main water line, I'm shouting, my phone camera jiggling as I film the geyser erupting from our front lawn. Muddy water sprays everywhere, soaking the pristine grass we'd worked so hard on. 3 men in Oak Ridge Estates HOA uniforms stand by a utility truck, arms crossed, smirking. Their faces are blurred slightly by the chaos, but their contempt is crystal clear. And then she steps forward. Aurora Blake, the HOA president. Platinum blonde hair, Armani suit that probably costs more than my car, and an expression so cold it could freeze hell. She glides towards me, flanked by 2 hulking figures in dark suits who look more like mob enforcers than community volunteers. "This is just the beginning, Mr. Monroe," Aurora says, her voice like ice chips. "In 72 hours, this house won't be yours anymore." My heart hammers against my ribs. "We haven't received a single violation notice." "Not one," I yell, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "This can't be happening." Aurora's lips curve into a chilling smile. "An oversight. Consider this your final notice." It hits me then, a sickening lurch in my gut. This isn't about manicured lawns or the color of our mailbox. This is something far more sinister. This is a conspiracy to steal our home. My hand tightens on my phone. They don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know about Scarlett, my wife, Commander Scarlett Monroe, U.S. Navy, captain of a destroyer, 350 sailors under her command, an arsenal that could level a small city, and she'd just been granted emergency leave. My phone buzzes in my other hand. A text from Scarlett. "Touchdown, on my way. They're going to regret messing with our family." A grim smile touches my lips. Oh, they have no idea. This isn't just a story, folks. This became a war zone. And the moment Scarlett stepped off that plane, the countdown to their total collapse began. My name is Austin Monroe. 3 months ago, my wife Scarlett, our 9-year-old daughter Madeline, and I moved into what we genuinely believed was our dream home in Oak Ridge Estates. You know the type. Upscale, manicured lawns, houses that look like they're ripped from a glossy magazine. After years of moving every time the Navy sent Scarlett to a new post, this was it, our forever home. I'm a freelance writer, so I'm usually the one holding down the fort while Scarlett is out there, literally commanding a warship. She's incredible, a commander in the U.S. Navy. Before that, a civil attorney. That last part, didn't think it would be relevant until the HOA from hell decided to declare war on us. It all started, as these things often do, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. I was in my home office, a sunlit room overlooking our newly planted rose bushes, trying to nail the ending of an article. Maddie was at school, Scarlett was deployed in the Mediterranean, a world away. Knock, knock, knock. Not a friendly knock. This was aggressive. Annoyed, I went to the door. Standing on my pristine porch were 3 people. 2 were large, built like bouncers, all scowls and crossed arms, flanking a smaller, weaselly guy in a cheap suit that looked 2 sizes too big. He had slicked back hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his cold, assessing eyes. The air around them felt heavy. "Connor Wallace," he said, extending a clammy hand I reluctantly shook. "HOA property manager." He practically spat the title. He handed me an official-looking document. The paper felt heavy, foreboding. "You have 72 hours to vacate the premises," he announced, his voice flat, like he was reading a script for a really bad movie. "For serious violations of HOA regulations." My stomach dropped. Vacate? I don't understand. What violations? My mind raced. Had Maddie left her bike on the lawn? Was our grass half an inch too long? We'd been so careful, read every single bylaw. We prided ourselves on being good neighbors. "There must be some mistake," I said, my heart starting to thrum a nervous rhythm against my ribs. "We've been here 3 months. We haven't received a single warning, no violation notice, nothing." Connor's smile widened, and it was predatory. "Well, you're getting one now, and it's terminal. The board has voted 72 hours. He gestured vaguely at our perfectly kept house and yard. Aesthetic standards, improper use of residential property, the list is long. But the document he'd handed me, it just had a signature, Aurora Blake, HOA president, and no specifics. 0. Can I see the list of specific violations? I pressed, my journalistic instincts, dormant for too long, starting to twitch. What exactly have we done wrong? The two large men shifted, a subtle, menacing movement. Connor's eyes hardened. Look, Mr. Monroe, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. You can make this easy, or you can make this hard. But if you're not out in 72 hours, we will involve the authorities. And trust me, you don't want that. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong here. My hand, almost instinctively, went to my pocket, found my phone, and I hit record, angling it subtly. Scarlett's voice echoed in my head. Always document, Austin. Always. After they swaggered off my porch, leaving a trail of slime and implied threats, I just stood there, the eviction notice trembling in my hand. The world had tilted on its axis. I immediately called Scarlett on her secure line. Thousands of miles away on a warship in the middle of an ocean, she was the calm in my storm. Don't sign anything, Austin, she instructed, her voice crisp and tactical. Take photos of the entire property, every angle, inside and out. Forward me that video you took, and call Kayla Jensen. She's a damn good attorney I worked with before I rejoined the Navy. Her number's in my old contacts list. Then her voice softened, that familiar warmth that always grounded me. We're not losing our home, Austin. They picked the wrong family to mess with. I believed her, but the knot in my stomach just tightened. As I was outside, phone in hand, meticulously photographing our perfectly maintained yard, the freshly edged lawn, the vibrant flower beds, the spotless siding, my neighbor from across the street, Theo Martinez, cautiously approached. Theo was a software engineer, worked remotely, always friendly but kind of reserved. He had this quiet intensity about him. Saw them at your door, he said, his eyes darting around nervously, like he was afraid of being seen talking to me. The HOA enforcers. When I explained what happened, his face darkened. You're not the first, he muttered, lowering his voice. The Thompsons, 2 blocks over. The Williamses before them, both pushed out. Suddenly. No real explanation. The Thompsons fought back, had their utilities cut, gate padlocked. He looked me straight in the eye. Be careful, Austin. These people aren't just making threats. They play dirty. That night, sleep was a foreign concept. I was wired, adrenaline and coffee coursing through me. I dived deep into the internet, researching Aurora Blake and the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. Aurora, retired real estate exec, late 50s, moved in 5 years ago, and somehow clawed her way to HOA president in record time. Whispers in old community forums about her heavy-handed approach, her my way or the highway attitude, but nothing concrete. Nothing that explained this blitzkrieg. The luxury interiors of her online property profiles screamed money and power, a stark contrast to the cheap tactics being used against us. This wasn't about a misplaced garden gnome. This was bigger. The next morning, the sun felt like an accusation. How could it shine so brightly when our world was falling apart? I decided to visit Hazel Wong. Theo had mentioned her as the neighborhood's unofficial historian. Her quaint cottage, wrapped in overgrown flowers and rebellion against HOA uniformity, was a burst of life. Hazel, sharp-eyed and small, invited me in before I could even finish explaining. Her dining table was buried in maps, clippings, and binders full of damning HOA documents. You're sitting on prime real estate, she said, pointing to my lot. Right where the access road would need to cut through if Aurora gets her way. She showed me plans. Aurora and her inner circle were pushing to sell off our community's green space to a luxury developer. My house and 5 others stood in the way. This wasn't about violations. This was a strategic purge. On my way home, a sleek black Bentley rolled by, slowing in front of our house. Behind the wheel, Luna Gallagher, HOA VP and mother of the developer's CEO. Her stare was cold, unbothered. When our eyes met, she sped off. That night I dug deeper, deeper than I ever had. I combed through archived HOA documents, cross-referenced obscure legal clauses buried in 15-year-old PDFs, and finally found it. Article 7, Section 4. Any eviction required a full public vote by the HOA board, with specific violations documented in the public record. Aurora's lone signature? Legally meaningless. She was banking on fear, not legality. Her campaign contributions to local officials suddenly took on a darker tone. Not generosity, but insulation. Protection. As I worked, I uncovered something far more sinister. County property records revealed a chilling pattern. 6 homes, all bordering the green space, had changed hands under suspicious circumstances. Each one sold well below market value after owners received sudden citations or threats. The buyers? A web of LLCs with fake addresses and obscure paperwork. But I followed the trail, and every line, every ownership transfer led to Gallagher Development Group. Luna Gallagher's son. This wasn't enforcement. This was strategic displacement. A hostile takeover disguised as community management. By the time I secured the files, diagrams, emails, minutes, legal filings, and uploaded backups to Scarlett's encrypted cloud, the house had gone quiet. Too quiet. I stood in the dark, the hum of my laptop the only sound, when I noticed it. A black sedan across the street, windows tinted too dark for suburban curiosity. Watching. My phone vibrated. No subject line. Just a single line. If you know what's good for you, sell your house. This neighborhood isn't for people like you. My hands clenched around the phone. Fear? Yes. But deeper still. Fury. This wasn't just a fight for our home anymore. This was war. And I wasn't planning to play defense. The next HOA monthly meeting felt like walking into a lion's den. The community center buzzed with an undercurrent of tension I hadn't noticed before. Aurora Blake, resplendent in a power suit the color of blood, sat at the head of the board table, her platinum hair a perfect helmet. Luna Gallagher, dripping in understated gold jewelry, sat beside her, whispering into Aurora's ear as I took a seat in the back. Her eyes, cold and reptilian, flicked towards me, a silent acknowledgement of my defiance. I waited, my heart a frantic drum, through the mundane agenda items, landscaping bids, pool maintenance schedules, then the open forum. I stepped up to the microphone, my hands surprisingly steady. "My name is Austin Monroe," I began, my voice echoing slightly in the suddenly quiet room. 3 days ago, I received an eviction notice from this HOA, signed by Ms. Blake, demanding my family and I vacate our home in 72 hours. This notice came without any prior warnings, any citations, any communication whatsoever. I'd like to know, publicly, exactly what violations my family has allegedly committed. The air crackled. Faces turned. Surprise, curiosity, a few flashes of fear. Aurora's face remained a mask of serene indifference. "Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice smooth as silk, deadly as a viper. "Individual enforcement actions are not appropriate for public discussion. If you wish to appeal, you may submit a written request. The board will consider it at our next meeting, in 30 days. Her dismissive tone, the subtle smirk playing on Luna's lips, made it clear she expected me to slink away. But I was prepared, thanks to Hazel and hours of poring over dusty documents. "Actually, Ms. Blake," I countered, my voice gaining strength. According to Article 7, Section 3 of the original HOA bylaws, which, to my knowledge, have never been legally amended in this regard, any eviction decision requires a public vote from the entire board, with specific violations cited in the public record. That doesn't appear to have happened in my case. A flicker. Just a tiny flicker of something. Surprise? Annoyance? In Aurora's icy eyes. Luna, however, jumped in, her voice sharp. Mr. Monroe clearly doesn't understand our updated procedures, which are perfectly legal. She gestured to a large screen, and suddenly, photos of my house flashed up. But it wasn't my house. Not really. The paint was peeling. The lawn was overgrown, littered with debris. There was a strange, industrial-looking piece of equipment visible in our garage, something we'd never owned. The photos were fakes, doctored, horribly, obviously doctored. A gasp went through the room. My blood boiled. This was insane. "Those photos are fabricated," I exclaimed, pulling out my phone. "I have current, unedited photos of my property taken yesterday, and video." I strode towards the projector, connecting my phone before anyone could object. The contrast was stark. My photos showed our home, immaculate, cared for. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Then Dominic Winslow, the HOA's accountant, a nervous, perpetually sweating man I'd barely noticed before, made a small, choked sound. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew. He knew those photos were fake. "And while we're discussing transparency," I pushed on, emboldened, "I'd also like to ask about the proposed sale of community green space to Gallagher Development Group, a company I believe run by Ms. Gallagher's son, and how that might relate to the sudden, aggressive interest in removing homeowners along Maple Street, homeowners whose properties would be essential for access roads to any such development." The room erupted. Shouts, questions, accusations. Many homeowners, it turned out, had no idea their precious green space, the heart of the community, was on the auction block. Several residents stood up, defending me, attesting to our property's impeccable condition. An elderly gentleman, his face flushed with anger, demanded to see the HOA's full financial records. Aurora, her face a mask of fury, refused. The meeting descended into utter chaos. Aurora banged her gavel, her voice shrill. "Meeting adjourned! Adjourned due to disruptive behavior." But the bomb had been detonated. As people filed out, many stopped me, voices hushed, offering support, sharing their own stories of HOA intimidation, of arbitrary fines, of fear. Phone numbers were exchanged. An alliance was forming, a resistance. Throughout the confrontation, one board member had remained conspicuously silent, his face pale. Dominic Winslow, the accountant. As I was leaving, he darted towards me, his eyes wide with fear. "Sunlight Cafe," he whispered, his breath smelling of stale coffee and anxiety. "Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. There's more to this than you know. So much more." Before I could respond, he scurried away, melting into the disgruntled crowd. I drove home, a strange mix of exhilaration and dread churning inside me. We'd landed a blow, but I knew, with chilling certainty, that they would hit back. Hard. And they did. When I pulled into my driveway, my blood ran cold. Spray painted across our brand-new, custom-made front door in garish, dripping red paint was a giant X, a target, a threat. This wasn't just about bylaws and property values anymore. This was personal. This was a declaration of war. I documented everything, my hands shaking with rage, then spent an hour scrubbing that hateful symbol off our door, the acrid smell of paint thinner filling my lungs. That night, I installed security cameras around our property, a precaution that would prove more critical than I could ever imagine. The very next morning, an official letter from the HOA slipped under our freshly scrubbed door. A fine, $300, for unapproved decoration on our front door, the very X they or their goons had painted. The audacity was breathtaking. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so infuriating, so terrifying. I added it to the growing pile of evidence. The file Scarlett had told me to keep. The file that was rapidly becoming a chronicle of outright persecution. After dropping a subdued Maddie at school, with strict instructions to stay close to her teachers and not leave with anyone but me, I met Dominic Winslow at the Sunlight Cafe. He arrived late, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He ordered a coffee he never touched, his hands trembling as he slid a nondescript USB drive across the table. "I've been the HOA's accountant for 6 years," he began, his voice barely audible over the cafe chatter. It wasn't always like this. But when Aurora took over, things changed." He licked his dry lips. "There's a shadow account. They've been skimming HOA fees for years, hundreds of thousands, using it to quietly buy up properties through shell companies, then flipping them to developers. The green space deal, that's the jackpot. Millions." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my mind reeling. Dominic's face flushed with shame. "Aurora. She found a mistake I made years ago, an accounting error. Small, but she threatened to report me, ruin my career. I was scared." He looked down at his shaking hands. "But this, the forged documents for your eviction, the vandalism, the intimidation, it's gone too far. Connor Wallace, their enforcer, he was fired from the police force. Excessive force. He's dangerous, Austin. Especially now. Aurora's got him on a tight leash, promising to clear his gambling debts if he handles situations like yours." This was it. Dominic was the whistleblower from my research, now laying it all bare. This USB drive was a gold mine. My next stop was Kayla Jensen's downtown law office. She was a force of nature. Sharp, no nonsense, with a reputation for taking on Goliaths and winning. After reviewing my evidence, Dominic's USB, the photos, the threatening letter, her expression was grim. "You've got a case, Austin," she said, her eyes hard. "A strong one. Financial fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, but they're not going to just roll over. They're going to escalate. They're used to getting their way. When they feel cornered, they lash out. Be prepared for things to get worse before they get better." She agreed to represent us, immediately filing for an emergency injunction against the HOA's eviction attempt, citing procedural violations, evidence of bad faith, and the newly acquired financial documents. Kayla's warning proved prophetic. That evening, Connor and his goon squad started openly patrolling our street, parking their menacing black SUV right in front of our house for hours. When I ordered pizza for Maddie and me, they followed the delivery driver to our door, questioning him, photographing his car. Our neighbors, the ones who'd offered support just days before, started avoiding eye contact. Their curtains twitched, but their doors stayed closed. The fear Aurora and her cronies cultivated was a palpable thing. Maddie came home from school in tears. "A boy in my class said we're criminals, Daddy," she sobbed into my chest. "He said we're stealing from the neighborhood and that's why we have to leave." The psychological warfare was relentless. It was wearing us down. That night, after tucking a frightened Maddie into bed, her favorite stuffed lion, King, clutched tightly, I called Theo. "Can Maddie stay with you and your family for a few days?" I asked, the words catching in my throat. "Just until Scarlett gets here." "Of course, Austin," he said without hesitation, his voice a calm reassurance in the chaos. "My wife can take her to school with our kids. She'll be safe with us." Gratitude washed over me. I packed an overnight bag for Maddie, her small hand clinging to mine as I explained that she was going to have a special sleepover at Theo's. Her eyes were wide, reflecting my own fear, but she nodded bravely. "Is Mommy coming home soon?" she whispered. "Very soon, sweetie," I promised, my heart aching. As I walked her across the street, the unmarked car was back, its occupants anonymous shadows in the deepening dusk. The red X on our door, though scrubbed clean, felt like it was still burning there, a brand of intimidation. Then Scarlett called. Her voice, usually so strong, had an edge of barely controlled fury. "I presented the evidence to my CO," she said, her words clipped. "The illegal threats against a military family, the financial crimes, the harassment of a dependent while I'm on active duty. It was enough. Emergency leave granted. I'll be home tomorrow morning, Austin. Just hold the fort one more night. I'm bringing the cavalry." Relief, so potent it almost buckled my knees. Scarlett was coming. But the night wasn't over. Around midnight, a loud crash jolted me awake. I raced outside. Our security cameras, all of them, smashed. Wires cut, lenses shattered, vandalized. They were isolating us, cutting off our eyes. Hours later, the lights flickered and died. The water sputtered and stopped. Utilities cut, just like the Thompsons. I sat in the suffocating darkness of our dream home, now a prison, packing essentials by the weak beam of my phone's flashlight. The irony was a bitter pill. They were making their move just before Scarlett arrived, a final, desperate show of force. What they didn't realize was that one of those broken cameras, the one hidden in the eaves above the garage, had a secondary battery-powered SD card, and it had kept recording. I wouldn't discover what it captured until later, but a tiny seed of hope sprouted in the darkness. They weren't as smart as they thought. Before leaving for the airport at dawn, I set up my laptop, running on its battery backup, camera aimed at the living room, recording. A silent sentinel in our besieged home. "They have no idea who they're messing with," I muttered, the words a prayer and a promise. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice. Chapter 4. The commander arrives. The sight of Scarlett striding through the airport terminal at 600 hours was like watching a sunrise after a long, dark night. She was in her full Navy commander uniform, crisp white service dress, medals gleaming, her officer's cap tucked perfectly under her arm. Her posture was erect. Her eyes, though tired from the transatlantic flight, were alert, scanning, assessing. The way people instinctively made way for her, the quiet respect she commanded without saying a word, it was a force field. When our eyes met, that rare, beautiful smile reserved just for family lit up her face, and the crushing weight on my chest eased for the first time in days. We embraced, a fierce, desperate hug. Her familiar scent, a mix of starch and something uniquely Scarlett, was an anchor. "I missed you," I whispered, my voice thick. "Missed you more," she murmured back, then pulled away slightly, her hands on my shoulders, her gaze intense. "Report, Austin. Everything. Don't leave out a single detail." This was Commander Monroe, ready for battle. As we walked to the car, the story poured out of me. The doctored photos, Dominic's USB, the red X, the cameras, the utilities, Maddie's fear. Scarlett listened, her expression growing grimmer with each revelation, occasionally interjecting with a sharp, clarifying question, her fingers flying across her phone screen, making notes. "Bringing out the big guns, I see," I said, gesturing to her uniform as we loaded her duffel into the trunk. Scarlett's smile was razor-sharp. "When you're heading into battle, Austin, you wear your armor. This uniform isn't just cloth and thread. It's a symbol of authority. It's a psychological weapon. They're not just dealing with Austin Monroe, homeowner, anymore. They're dealing with Commander Monroe, United States Navy. And they're about to find out what that means." Back at our dark, silent house, Scarlett went into full operational mode. She methodically swept the property, examining the vandalized cameras, the tampered utility boxes, her expression hardening with each discovery. She took dozens of photos, her own meticulous documentation. "Textbook intimidation," she said, her voice tight, kneeling by the ravaged electrical panel. "Deliberate targeting of critical infrastructure to make the property uninhabitable without a formal eviction. Illegal. Vicious." She spread all our evidence. My photos, Dominic's USB, Hazel's research, the HOA letters, the police reports I'd filed about the vandalism, across the dining room table, which was now illuminated by tactical flashlights she'd produced. From her bag. "This isn't just an HOA dispute," she concluded after an hour of intense scrutiny. "This is organized corruption, racketeering, conspiracy. We attack on multiple fronts, simultaneously." Her first call was to the city utilities director, a fellow veteran she'd served with during a hurricane relief effort years ago. Her tone was respectful but steel-edged. She cited state law, chapter and verse, regarding illegal utility disconnection. No mention of her rank was needed. Her email signature with her full title did the talking. Within 2 hours, a city crew was on our doorstep, apologizing profusely, restoring our water and power. The crew chief quietly told us they'd been informed the house was abandoned and derelict. A blatant lie. Her second call was to a contact at the Global Herald, a national newspaper with a renowned investigative unit. She didn't pitch our story as a personal grievance. She framed it as systemic corruption, HOA tyranny, with documented proof. The reporter, smelling a Pulitzer, agreed to meet us that afternoon. Her third call was to an old law school classmate, now high up in the state attorney general's office, Consumer Protection Division. She laid out the evidence of financial fraud, conspiracy, and targeted harassment. Then Scarlett turned to me, a glint in her eye. "Theo Martinez, you said he warned you, seemed nervous, but solid. What's his story?" "Software engineer, works from home. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself mostly, but he and his wife were the first to offer help with Maddie." Scarlett nodded slowly. "Ask him if he'll talk to me. Privately. Something about your description. It piques my interest." While Scarlett was making her calls, Maddie, bless her 9-year-old heart, had been busy. She'd been unusually quiet since Scarlett's return, watching her mother with a mixture of awe and anxiety. Later that day, Theo's wife, Sarah, mentioned something to me. "Maddie's been making these little videos on her tablet," Sarah said, a concerned smile on her face. "She calls it her secret agent report, mostly about how mean Ms. Blake is, and how her dad is sad, and how her mom is a superhero." My heart skipped a beat. I found Maddie in Theo's backyard, tablet in hand, whispering into it. "This is our house," she was saying, showing a drawing of our home with a big red X on the door. "And this is the mean lady who wants to take it." She'd been posting them to TikTok. Under a pseudonym, Justice Maddie. Some of them, especially one showing the actual, scrubbed but still visible X on our door, filmed from across the street, had started getting views, thousands of views, and comments. Lots of angry, supportive comments. My little girl, in her own way, was fighting back, drawing public attention we hadn't even realized. That evening, another certified letter from the HOA. They were proceeding with property seizure in 48 hours, citing some obscure, previously unheard-of covenant clause about expedited reclamation to protect community interests. Scarlett merely raised an eyebrow. "Right on schedule. Predictable." She added it to the growing mountain of evidence. "They're getting desperate." "Good." Later, I approached Theo. "Scarlett would like to talk to you, Theo. Privately. She said she has a hunch." Theo looked surprised, then thoughtful. He glanced back at his own perfectly ordinary suburban house, then back at me, a strange, unreadable expression in his eyes. "Okay, Austin. After dark. My place." That night, under the cloak of a moonless sky, Scarlett and I slipped across the street to Theo's. His living room was ordinary, comfortable, but as he closed the blinds, his demeanor shifted. The friendly, slightly nervous neighbor persona dissolved, replaced by someone sharper, more focused. "Scarlett, Austin," he began, his voice lower, more resonant than I'd ever heard it. "I haven't been entirely forthcoming. My software engineering is mostly a cover these days. I retired a couple of years ago." He paused, then dropped the bombshell. "From the FBI, White-Collar Crime Division. specialized in, well, rackets like this. Scarlett didn't even blink. A slow smile spread across her face. I thought so, she said. Your observational skills are a little too keen for a civilian, Theo, and your security system is government grade. Theo nodded. When Aurora Blake and Luna Gallagher took over this HOA, some of the patterns, they felt familiar. I started a quiet, off-the-books file. The shell companies, the undervalued sales, the intimidation tactics. It's a classic playbook. I've been tracking their digital footprints, their financials where I could. Dominic Winslow coming forward to you? That was a calculated risk on his part, but he knew I was observing. He felt he had a silent backup. He opened a laptop, and the screen filled with intricate diagrams, financial flows, encrypted communications he'd managed to access. Aurora isn't just a power-hungry retiree, Scarlett. She has connections, not just local politicians. There are whispers of organized crime involvement in some of her past real estate ventures. And Connor Wallace isn't just an ex-cop with a temper. He's deeply in debt to some very unpleasant people. Aurora holds that over him. Then, he pulled up a personnel file. Officer Miller, local PD. This is Officer Derek Miller, Theo said, his face grim. He's been seen meeting with Aurora Blake, late nights, off duty. They're involved, romantically. Miller has a history of complaints for selective enforcement and turning a blind eye when it suits him. He's her inside man at the precinct. My jaw dropped. The local cop in bed with the HOA president, literally. No wonder our complaints about vandalism went nowhere. But there's more, Theo said, his voice dropping. Your house, Austin. There's a reason they're so desperate for this specific lot, beyond just road access. He pulled up an old, digitized newspaper article from 30 years ago. The headline read, Local banker vanishes, foul play suspected. Empty safe found in Oak Ridge home. The address was our address. The banker was rumored to have a private vault hidden somewhere in the house, Theo explained. Never found. Legend has it, it contained not just cash, but ledgers detailing illicit deals with some very powerful people. People Aurora might know. Or people Gallagher Development might not want exposed if they start digging foundations. Just then, Maddie, who had been helping Sarah bake cookies, came in, holding a tattered, leather-bound journal. Mommy, Daddy, look what I found in the attic at our house when I was getting my old dollhouse. It was under a loose floorboard. My heart hammered. I'd been up there a dozen times and seen nothing. Scarlett took the journal, her gloved hands, she'd been handling evidence all day, carefully opening it. The spidery handwriting was faded. It was a diary. The missing banker's diary. The last entry, dated the day before he disappeared. They know about the ledgers. AB's father is involved. He said he'd silence me. I've hidden everything where they'll never think to look. The old root cellar beneath the... The entry ended there, smudged. A.B. Aurora Blake, her father, the root cellar. Hazel had mentioned our house was one of the oldest, built on an old farmstead, possibly with a filled-in cellar. The hidden footage from the broken camera above our garage suddenly became critical. I raced back to our house, retrieved the SD card, and we played it on Theo's laptop. There it was. Connor Wallace, late at night, not just smashing the camera, but before that, meticulously searching around the foundation of our garage, tapping the concrete slab as if looking for something. He'd been looking for the cellar entrance. The pieces clicked into a terrifying mosaic. This wasn't just about greed. This was about silencing the past. Our house held a secret that could destroy Aurora, and possibly others. Scarlett's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. They've made a critical error, she said softly. They've given us leverage they don't even know we have. The next 24 hours were a blur of coordinated action. Scarlett, Theo, and Kayla Jensen worked like a well-oiled machine. Kayla prepared emergency filings, incorporating the new evidence. Theo used his contacts to discreetly alert federal authorities about the potential organized crime links and the cold case. Scarlett orchestrated a community meeting. The Global Herald reporter, already deep into his investigation, was ecstatic with the new developments. Maddie's TikToks, meanwhile, had unexpectedly gone viral. A HOA horror story and justice for Maddie were trending locally. News vans started appearing on our street. The public eye was now firmly on Oak Ridge Estates. The morning of the HOA's threatened property seizure dawned bright and clear, a mocking sort of beauty for the showdown that was about to occur. At precisely 9 a.m., Aurora Blake's black Bentley purred to a stop in front of our house. Luna Gallagher, looking smug, was in the passenger seat. Connor Wallace and his two thugs emerged from their SUV, carrying a new door lock and a heavy chain. They seemed momentarily taken aback. I was sitting calmly on my front porch, sipping coffee. Scarlett, in her immaculate uniform, stood beside me. Theo Martinez was on his lawn, ostensibly reading a newspaper. Hazel Wong was tending her roses, her gaze fixed on the unfolding drama. And dotted along the sidewalk were at least a dozen other neighbors, all coincidentally out for a morning stroll, phones visibly recording. The Global Herald reporter and a cameraman were already set up across the street. "Good morning, Aurora, Luna," Scarlett said, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "Beautiful day." Aurora's eyes narrowed. "This property is being reclaimed by the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association," she announced, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "Mr. Monroe, you were given 72 hours. You are now trespassing. Connor, proceed." As Connor stepped forward, Kayla Jensen materialized from our doorway, a stack of documents in her hand. "Not so fast, Ms. Blake," Kayla said, her voice sharp. "This is an emergency injunction, granted by Judge Miller this morning, barring any eviction attempt by the Oak Ridge HOA against the Monroe family." She handed a copy to a stunned Aurora. "Furthermore, we have evidence of financial fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, forgery, and witness intimidation. And Officer Miller," she gestured to a patrol car that had just pulled up, summoned by Aurora, no doubt. "I believe your associate, Ms. Blake, may have some questions to answer regarding her relationship with you and potential obstruction of justice." Officer Miller, the corrupt cop, went pale. He hadn't known Kayla was referring to him. Aurora's face contorted with rage. "This is outrageous! You have no idea who you're dealing with! I have connections!" She whirled on Connor. "Get rid of them! Get rid of their evidence!" "Whatever it takes." Connor hesitated, his eyes darting from Aurora to Scarlett's uniform, to the news cameras, to the steely gaze of Theo Martinez, who now held up a very official-looking badge. "Actually, Aurora," Theo said, his voice ringing out clear, "I think you have no idea who you've been dealing with. FBI, retired. But my friends in the Bureau are very interested in your little enterprise. And those ledgers from the old root cellar? We found them last night. Fascinating reading." Aurora Blake looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Luna Gallagher tried to make a run for the Bentley, but was calmly blocked by a semicircle of determined-looking grandmothers, led by Hazel. The regular police officers who had arrived expecting a simple eviction assistance now found themselves in the middle of a major criminal takedown. Scarlett stepped forward. "In naval strategy, Ms. Blake," she said, her voice quiet but carrying to every microphone, "we call this controlled escalation. You create a situation where your opponent has no good options left. You, ma'am, have just run out of options." The HOA meeting called the following week was standing room only. Scarlett, Theo, and Kayla laid out the entire sordid scheme, the forged documents, the skimmed funds, the shell companies, the intimidation, the connection to the 30-year-old cold case, the banker's diary, the recovered ledgers. Dominic Winslow, no longer sweating, provided damning testimony, corroborated by the HOA's own internal records he'd secretly copied for years. The vote to remove Aurora Blake and Luna Gallagher was unanimous. The cheers in the community center were deafening. The fallout was swift and satisfying. Aurora Blake, facing a mountain of evidence, including her father's name in the recovered ledgers, was arrested. She eventually faced charges for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Her political connections evaporated like morning mist. Luna Gallagher lost her real estate license and faced her own set of charges. Connor Wallace, in exchange for testimony against them and others named in the banker's ledgers, received a reduced sentence. Officer Miller was suspended and faced an internal affairs investigation that ended his career. The recovered ledgers? They implicated several prominent local figures in decades-old corruption, leading to a string of new investigations that rocked our city. Our little HOA fight had unearthed a much deeper rot. Madeline's TikToks, minor justice for Maddie, became a local phenomenon, then a national one as the story was picked up by major news outlets. She became an unlikely symbol of standing up to bullies. The Global Herald expose won a journalism award. Our community transformed. Theo Martinez was elected the new HOA president, with Hazel Wong as a senior advisor. Their first act? Full transparency. All meetings live-streamed, all financial records posted online. The green space was officially designated a permanent community park, named Monroe Martinez Unity Park. I wrote a book, HOA War Zone, How One Family Fought Back and Reclaimed Their Community. It became a surprise bestseller, a handbook for others facing similar battles. Scarlett received a commendation from the Navy for exemplary leadership and upholding civil principles in a challenging civilian crisis. Her actions even inspired a new initiative to provide better legal support for deployed service members facing predatory practices back home. Our house, once a target, became a symbol of resilience. We never found a hidden vault of cash, but the banker's diary and ledgers were treasure enough, bringing a dark chapter of our town's history to light and ensuring justice, however delayed. It wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to give up, to run, but we stayed. We fought, not just for our home, but for our community, for the principle that no one, no matter how powerful they think they are, should be able to bulldoze their way over ordinary people. The biggest lesson? Corruption thrives in silence and isolation. But when people stand together, when they shine a light into the darkness, even the most entrenched bullies will eventually fall. So, if you're out there, facing your own HOA from hell, or any kind of injustice, remember our story. Document everything. Find your allies. Don't be afraid to make some noise. And never, ever underestimate the power of a united community or a determined mom in a Navy uniform. Thanks for listening. And hey, if you like this story, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, life is never dull around here.